Hey YouTube, welcome to another speed paint vlog by ST Linthoria. Welcome to the show. So, when I was in high school, I was a goody two-shoes, holier-than-thou Christian girl. I mean, I'm still Christian, but I don't shove it in people's faces the way I did back then, basically. I'm not as offensive about it. Meaning that I know how to mind my own business. And while I would love to talk to you about how much of a difference God has made in my life, I'm not going to tell you that you are a horrible human being if you don't follow in my footsteps. I'm not going to make any judgments on how your relationship with God is going down. I'm not going to do anything like that. I'm not. But I certainly was doing all that in high school. And I'm bringing this up because I remember distinctly how back then it was my opinion that tattoos were just fine so long as they weren't for someone who is dead. I know quite a few Christians believe that tattoos are bad, period. But for that particular passage of the Bible, it is really specifically mentioning that you should not tattoo in memory of the dead, basically. I'm relatively sure that it had something to do with like the practices of that time for other faiths or something like that, whatever. I'm not going to get into all that because this is not a theological debate here. But back then my belief was that if I ever got a tattoo, it would never be in memory of a dead person. And funny thing is, I only have one tattoo now. And it's basically in memory of my dad who passed away earlier this year. Yeah, like, not really only one person knows this or knew this before I put this all out in the public webs. Assuming that anyone ever actually, watches these videos. But there was only one person who knew that, and that was my best friend. I had been talking with him about getting a tattoo for the longest time. Like, yeah, I mean, tattoos are awesome. I would love to get one. But I can't think of anything that would really stick with me. And then my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And I was devastated. Growing up, my dad and I didn't have the closest relationship. But he was, he was just an amazing guy, honestly. He was always so loving to us, even in his darkest moments. He was so loving to us. He was very loving to my mom until the divorce, until the went down before the divorce. Obviously, I miss him, but when we got the news about his diagnosis, I was devastated, honestly, because it happened after just a year or so after he finally seemed to be getting out of the hole that he seemed to have been stuck in directly after the divorce. He was finally in a place where he seemed happy about his life, content with his life, and it felt like such a kick in the pants that he would get that type of diagnosis after finally being happy, seeing him happy, after kind of knowing in the back of my mind that he wasn't for so long. That was a rough point when it came to my relationship with God for a little bit there. It was very difficult, but as the days went on, and as I learned that know. My dad has, even before the diagnosis, my dad had always been in pain, you know. Like, yeah, him being in a bad place emotionally certainly insinuated that, but he had always been in pain. I started to realize, yeah, maybe it would be better for him to be with God, but man, it's still kind of, I don't know, you always think that if someone you love passes away, you'd want to go suddenly. In this case, I don't know what the best answer would have been. I know that it was both a curse and a blessing to know that my dad was not going to be lasting any more than 5-10 years, maybe, if we were really, really lucky, which we ended up not being. But knowing that there was that timer over his head was both a blessing and a curse. It prompted us all to kind of focus even more heavily on spending time with him. I mean, we already loved going over to his place for card nights and things like that, but it became even more of a focus. At the same time, though, in the back of my mind at least, was that thought of, man, what are we gonna do when he's gone? What am I gonna do when he's gone? And that's kind of what led to me getting the tattoo in the first place. To bring it back around to my original point here. As time went on, it occurred to me that, I mean, I wasn't sure how I would hold up after he passed, because he brought me out of a very, very, very dark place when my depression got extremely bad enough to the point where I acknowledged that I had to get on medications to make sure that I could manage myself better for my own mental health and safety. And as time went on, and that fantasy that I had in my back of my head that he would magically pull through this, and the chemotherapies and the treatments and everything would make it so that it wouldn't just slow down, it would stop the cancer, you know. As that hope in the back of my mind dwindled and went away, and I grew to, at least theoretically, you know, accept that this was it, that he would pass away from this, you know, I began to also come to the realization that I couldn't trust myself when that happened, because I couldn't trust that I would be able to pull myself out by myself. I was terrified that losing him would break me, and that I wouldn't be able to get myself out of the inevitable, because I knew it was inevitable, really. I mean, that's a lot of emotion for anyone to go through, but when you're struggling with depression as well, on top of it, as your kind of your baseline in a way, yeah, I knew it would be tough, and I didn't trust myself to be able to pull myself out of it. And I'm stubborn as all get out, and I didn't want to be asking for help, especially from when the only people that I would automatically trust are like my best friend and my family members who would be going through the loss as well. So what I decided was, what I needed to do is make sure to have a permanent mark placed on me, to make sure that whenever I looked at that mark, I was reminded that he pulled me through the darkest period of my life, to remind me that he saw something worth saving, to remind me that I was worth saving and worth his love. basically to get that strength in one form or another. So I struggled a lot with like what I would choose. I ended up choosing a butterfly. I chose a monarch butterfly because my dad's name was Richard, which always made me think of King Richard. And King Richard was part of a monarchy, so that's how the the logic flowed there. And I ended up getting it on my forearm just because I've only ever really had, and again, no one else knows this. I'm not even sure if my best friend knows this until now, but I've only ever had one actual suicide attempt, which didn't go very far, and it was going for the wrists. And also, in general, my forearms I can usually see. So, I chose my forearm, my left forearm, for the location of the tattoo. And it's done what it was supposed to do. This past year has been so difficult. Not just because of my dad passing away, because of my uncle passing away, because my grandma is likely to soon pass away on my mom's side, and also because of financial issues that have just been screwing me over and making me feel like a useless adult for pretty much the entire year. So with all of that going on in my life, there have definitely been many points, especially during the second half of the year, where I just was tempted to just give up, and each time I'd kind of just look down. I'd start by looking down at my hands, and inevitably I would track to my forearm, and I would see that butterfly, and I would be reminded of how much my dad loved me, how much he wanted me to live. And it's enough for me to get the strength to do what I gotta do to carry on. Whether that means taking of minutes at work, or taking the day off work, or playing video games, or drawing, or starting up this YouTube channel. Whatever it meant. Whatever it took. That little butterfly gave me the strength to move on. So I would encourage anyone who is going through something like this, who knows that a loved one is going to be passing soon, and who's not sure how they are going to deal with that loss, if they are going to be able to deal with that loss, or even someone who isn't dealing very well with that loss, take a moment to remember that they love you, and they would not want to see you very soon on the other side. They would want you here as long as is humanly possible, with no outside interference, God willing, for until the end of the days is their preference, I'm sure, but and if you need something to help with that reminder, I would encourage you to pick a symbol that will make you think of them and get a tattoo in a place that will help you. Because honestly, it has done wonders. So real fast, before I go into details about this particular piece, I also want to say that I am very grateful to my best friend, who I mentioned pretty early on in this vlog, because throughout this last year, he has been so supportive. Yeah, so I just wanted to say thanks to my best friend, to my soul brother, being there for me this past year. Because I know that your year hasn't exactly been the easiest either. I know you've been through some things. But you were still there, and you were still supportive. And I am so grateful to you for that. So, just wanted to say that quick thanks. But this piece was actually one that I created a little bit after the recording for the audio. Like, I recorded the audio before I had even gone to visit my grandmother back near the end of October. Like end of October, early November, somewhere around there. So that's why I mentioned her possibly passing away, not just her actually passing away. So it was a while ago. And I made it largely because I was thinking about my dad a lot during that time, because Thanksgiving was my dad's holiday. There's really no contest between who would be hosting Thanksgiving. Like, even if it meant that we would get two Thanksgivings that year, he was down for Thanksgiving. That was his thing. So I was thinking about him a lot more, and it led to me going ahead and recording the audio for this. And I didn't really go back to listen to audio to review it until early December. And after listening to it, that's when I started to draw this piece. So a lot of it is inspired from the after feelings, I guess, of reviewing my thoughts on things and things like that. Like, I was kind of meditating on it a little bit. So this piece is born from that, just a representation of kind of how I felt when my dad passed. Sad I was, and horrified I was, which is why it's kind of the Scream-esque, the face of it and everything. But despite me feeling that way, still kind of reaching up in a way, reaching up and pushing the soul that is meant to represent my father's soul up towards the heavens. And I kind of chose a darker red because even though I knew that that was the right choice, I didn't feel like it. And when I got it all done, I felt a lot better. I feel like this piece was another healing step, so I felt that it was very important to pair it with this particular audio for my speed paint vlog. So yeah, I hope 2019 is great and fulfilling for you guys, and love you lots.